Hey dudes, it's me, Aaron Mack, the BS detector. Anyways, I'm sleepy this morning. My sleeping schedule has just gone ham. So I was a complete and total insomniac. Like literally when the sun came up, I would go to sleep. Well, when I went back to work, somehow I got to where I could fall asleep around like maybe 10, 11 at night, but then I wake up without fail around 3, between 3 and 3:30, maybe 4. And then once I'm awake, that's when I've been recording these readings to you guys because I'm awake. Everybody else in the house is asleep. It's something I can sit and do while all is quiet upstairs. And so today I woke up and I was thinking, I'm just going to go back to sleep, man. I'm just so tired. But look how close we are. We have already made it. Well, I know it probably doesn't look like much, but it feels like a lot. Feeling what we have left as to what we've read. So we really don't have that much left. I'd say maybe 2 or 3 more readings after this one. And then I'm going to do the Fauci thing real quick. And then I don't know, what should we do next? Should we do Beware the World to Come? Should we read the book about the Balfour Balfour Declaration, the transfer agreement? I don't even know where that book is. It's somewhere. Anyways, so we were reading about TV and how it is used. I mean, I think that's literally what it was created for, was like to brainwash us, because that's all it's used for. I mean, now granted, yes, you can watch videos or whatever on YouTube, and 10 to 15 years ago, YouTube was awesome. There was so much good information on here. Now it is all like slowly being replaced with these Christian channels that, I don't know. Some of them are great. Some of them are awesome. And then, but it's like just the rehashing the same old stuff. Ain't nobody really talking about anything. Hold on, let me get my coffee. Okay, anyways. So we were talking about TV and we were talking about YouTube and how there's really, I mean, that's why I decided to make this channel, because nobody is really talking about this stuff. I mean, there is a select few channels, but I feel like even their understandings are disparate and competing almost. It's like they agree, but they disagree. And in that, I'm talking about Ben Born Again's channel and Israel Anderson's channel. They both contend that Yahweh is the devil or Saturn or whatever. But one says that Ben Born Again contends that the Old Testament God is not Yahweh. So then, we have to figure out, is Yahweh the God of the Old Testament? So anyways, that's just where I'm at with that. And it's just crazy. Like there's a couple of new channels that I like. One is Christian For Real. I like that guy. He's cool. And there's another channel, and it's actually, I can see it in the mirror in my vanity right now. It's on right now. I don't know, I fall asleep with YouTube on and I wake up with YouTube on. But it's another Christian channel, and I really like these guys too. Because there's so much like Torah terrorism going on YouTube, but it's like, you don't need the Torah to tell you how to behave. Jesus told you. So it's weird. I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to stop yapping now, and we are going to go into the sub section called Carl Jung and the Austrian painter, or Hitler. I don't want to say it because I don't want my channel to get flagged, because this is the state of YouTube now. You can't say shit or they will totally censor you. So that's cool. Anyways, all right. One key neo-Freudian who became an overt supporter of the Nazis was the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, whose friendship with Freud ended over the latter's refusal to see value in Gnostic mysticism. Wow. Okay. Freud, who was opposed to integrating mystical ideas into psychoanalysis, associated the word mysticism with seances, voices from other worlds, noises, apparitions, levitation, trances, and prophecies. Quote, Jung saw in the Austrian painter the apotheosis of Jung's own search for a kind of pagan communion with the beyond, a search that began in 1915 with Jung's colossal nervous breakdown, end quote. In his 1997 essay on the subject of the Austrian painter and Jung, Wolff believes there is the strongest possible connection between Jung's psychoanalytic theories, which form one of the conceptual bases of New Age ideology today, and his fascination with the Austrian painter. Quote, for Jung was obsessed by the notion that the deepest reality, the greatest truth, lay buried in the unconscious, mystical, psychotic aspects of man's mind, as opposed to the rational, outward, scientific, Judeo-Christian view of the world, end quote. That term just really chaps my behind, y'all. Anyways, okay. That's a contradiction in terms. So it's Christian. It's a Christian world. Christianity is what grew and spread, and all of these kingdoms and countries and the West and all of that sprung forth from not Judaism. Okay, let's be so for real. Anyways, and Judaism is not even Torah. Okay, it's not even Torah, because they do Talmud. All right, so my personal journey with it and figuring out what the hell is up with the Old Testament is irrelevant in the context of Christianity. It has played a major significant role. So, but that's not what Judaism is based on, and we have to learn to differentiate those things. And that, I think, is really where the modern Christian church's problem is today in America, is they don't make that differentiation. They treat the Shemayinist state of Israel as the same people as the Old Testament, and they're just simply not the same people. So anyways, and they have two totally, Israel is mostly an atheist. It's a secular state, the inhabitants of which are mostly atheists. And then the quote unquote religious ones practice, ancient Babylonian mysticism, aka Talmud. That's what their rabbis and stuff teach. And then you have a very, 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 very small minority that actually that's like Orthodox Judaism, that they actually follow Torah and all that. Anyways, that was the basis of Jung's decades-long long search through himself, quote, attempting to find a pre-existing myth or mythic system which aptly illustrated his ideas about the human psychology of religion, end quote. He began with Gnosticism, then went on to study astrology, and then speculative alchemy as a symbolic system. Sounds a little woo-woo to me. To Jung, there is a deep substratum of consciousness that lies beneath the layers of mechanical instincts and the measurable phenomena of clinical psychology. Jung called it, quote, the collective unconscious. It's called your spirit. It's called the spirit world. These freaking psychologists are literally hilarious. And they try to medicate you out of your spiritual journey, almost. It's very strange, modern psychiatry and psychology. Anyways, These images become visible under certain circumstances, such as in political rallies or religious rituals, or on the movie screen, or in advertising and propaganda, and we will take them for granted without realizing the power they represent or the extent to which they may be manipulating our consciousness. And in turn, these images, this pattern or matrix underlying the observed universe, a kind of grid of connections linking events according to a system we can only barely perceive, are manipulated by the unseen hand of the brainwashers at Tavistock Institute and Frankfurt School. Tavistock Institute for Human Relations is the psychological warfare arm of the British royal family, located in a suburb of London. It is the world's most important institution for manipulation of population. And I know that as at Prince Charles or King is either King, I don't even know how it works, but the dad of Prince Charles, isn't his name Charles too? Anyways, I know I've heard him talk about depopulation. So that tracks. Okay. According to the official history of the Tavistock Clinic, they have a clinic and they are transgendering the hell out of a lot of kids. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Okay. Quote, in 1920, under its founder, Dr. Hugh Crichton Miller's leadership, the clinic made a significant contribution to the understanding of the traumatic effects of, quote, shell shock, end quote. In the 1930s, the Tavistock Institute developed a symbiotic relationship with the Frankfurt Institute for Social Research. Their collaboration led them to analyze the culture of a population from a neo-Freudian standpoint. Nazism just happened to have been one of its, quote, patients on a psychiatric couch, end quote. Hold on, I think the dog wants to go out. Okay, I'm back. And I just wanted to say the other channel is True Christian. So we got Christian for Real and True Christian. I like both of those guys. I like both of their channels. Anyways, I just walked by the TV and he actually had his little banner or whatever up for his channel. So True Christian and Christian for Real. I don't even know their names. It's two different dudes. I don't know where they're from. I don't know anything about them, but I have been watching some of their videos. I gave that other channel Arcade Drift or something like that. But he lost me at you have to read the Masoretic text because Dead Sea Scrolls. That's when he lost me. Okay? No. Anyways, but I've gone over that. And I guess I'll say it again. The Greek Septuagint is 1,000 years older than the Masoretic text. Period. End of story. Point blank. And just because it's written, the Masoretic text is, quote, written in quote unquote Hebrew, which is it's literally just a mishmash of Aramaic and some other languages. Dude, it was not a spoken language, even in Jesus' time. And people want to Hebrewize Jesus' name. They act like, well, Jesus isn't a Hebrew name, okay? Does it have to be? It is. If his name is Jesus, it's Hebrew now. I mean, what? Y'all kill me with some of this nonsense that I see in these comment sections. Anyways, let me shut up and get back to reading. All right. In a nutshell, Hitler was the prototype of Jungian man who surrendered his reason to his unconscious and who welcomed divine madness as Jung himself advised. Okay, let's just go ahead and get this out here. The Austrian painter was a meth head. Okay, he was delusional. All right, at least at certain points of his ruling and reigning or whatever the heck was going on over there. Like, he was on meth or he was on amphetamines. So same difference to me. It does the same thing to you spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's the devil. It is the devil. And so, yeah, no wonder. I mean, I may not agree with the official story of what happened with the Schmolocaust or whatever, but I definitely know that he did go ape shit, batshit crazy. And And I know that a lot of damage was caused. But anyways, that's all I'm going to concede. But he was on mad drugs, okay? The guy was like blitzed out of his mind. Okay. So, Jung had been impressed by the Austrian painter's meteoric rise to power and recognized that the dictator, quote, must have tapped some extraordinary energy in the Teutonic unconsciousness, end quote. What? For example, in March 1934, Jung was writing of the, quote, formidable phenomenon of National Socialism, blah, blah, on which the whole world gazes with astonishment. Jung goes on to suggest that the Aryan unconscious has, quote, a higher potential than the J's, end quote. Hitler, I didn't mean to say his name, the Austrian painter, Jung wrote, quote, had literally set all Germany on its feet, end quote. In a 1932 essay, Jung had celebrated the, quote, leader personality, quote, of the Fuhrer as against the, quote, ever secondary lazy masses who cannot take the least move in the absence of a demagogue, end quote. And that is true. He took action. In 1936, Jung perceived Hitler, you know, the Austrian painter. God, I keep almost saying it. I'm still half asleep, guys, and I'm working on my coffee, but it's not working. I probably need to go lay back down and take a nap. A little nappy nap. I definitely am. I have to work tonight. Anyways, okay. Again, demagogue. Okay, in 1936, Jung perceived the Austrian painter to be of the previously repressed Wotanic elements, which is an ancient Germanic god, Wotan, I guess. Quote, the impressive thing about the German phenomenon is that one man who is obviously possessed, you think, has infected a whole nation to such an extent that everything is set in motion and has started rolling on its course towards perdition, end quote. Was Jung unaware of the SS's true nature? The Schnazis? Hardly. In 1938, after 5 years after the Austrian painter's rise to power, Jung classified the Austrian painter as visionary and a truly inspired shaman or medicine man whose power was magical rather than political, a spiritual vessel, the first man to tell every German that what he has been thinking and feeling all along in his unconscious about German fate, end quote. Jung added that the Austrian painter's power is not political, it is magic. And I think that's probably true. There was definitely something wildly spiritual about that. Anyways, as France surrendered to Germany on June 1940, the date the summer solstice did not pass unnoticed by Jung and other Nazi mystics. And everything is always done on these dates and on these times of the sun and the moon and the stars. Like they all everything, I feel like everything is scripted down to a T here, all this stuff. Okay. Jung cried ecstatically, quote, it is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, end quote. It is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, age of Aquarius. What was that, the Mamas and the Papas or something? I'm showing how old I am now. Anyways, okay. Blah, blah. Where was I, bro? I keep joking around and then losing my spot. Okay. It is rather fine irony that it was Carl Jung, of all people, who coined that phrase, made current so much later, with the rise of the, quote, New Age. Needless to say, the Schnazis represented but a minority of the German population. Let's say that again. They represented but a minority of the German population, even when they were in power. But everybody acts like all of Germany is a bunch of Nazis. Like, come on. What about the so-called good Germans who went along with the Austrian painter's terror? How was it done? The same way it is being done to us today and every day through the mass media dissemination of, quote, information. And see, this is also almost like a psyop within a psyop to me because, you know, just poo-pooing all information. People need information, dude. And what happened in Germany is we're not being told the truth about it at all. And from what I have gathered just from reading J-ish materials is that the Germans were provoked, highly provoked. They were drained of all their wealth. Their culture that was mostly Christian, okay, was being subverted with gay shit, trans shit, you know, shit that was like very subversive at the time. And then also they realized that they had been double crossed. You have to go back and watch Facts Are Facts. I've read it. It's down at the very bottom. Probably maybe I started it on like my third video on this channel or something, and it's not a very long book. But this gentleman that wrote, it's really a letter, it's not even a book. He included some very interesting information about both World Wars One and Two, and the causes of what it was, because you know that whatever they told us in school, which I don't even remember because I didn't pay any attention to anything in school because I knew they were something in me just knew they were bullshitting me. So I slept through high school. I mean, I learned math and stuff, you know, and like obviously how to read, but I don't know. High school just did not work for me. And now I see why. Anyways, okay. So the same way as being done to us today and every day through the mass media dissemination of, quote, information. And this is where I'm going to have to step in and kind of say this is getting a little almost like he's pushing an agenda here. Anyways, and the most universal of the mass media was radio. In fact, once in power, the Nazis ordered the production and mass dissemination of cheap radio receivers for the entire population of the country. Now, in this way, absolutely, absolutely. If you're getting your information from sources like TV and radio and even certain books, you know, but there are people out there that are truth seekers that find the information that is trying to be hidden from you, and they do things like what I'm doing here. They share it on the interwebs anyways, or they try to sell it, which I'm not trying to sell nothing. I just want to tell people what's going on. Okay, this is the real meaning of, quote, mass audience, end quote. The concept behind it was the same as discussed by Freud in mass psychology. That is, quote, individuals participating in the mass phenomenon are susceptible to suggestion, to losing his moral conscience, thus becoming overwhelmed by the mass experience, end quote. Brainwashers call it, quote, institutional human aggressiveness, end quote. What people like Freud say proves that people, us, are animals driven towards destruction. And ultimately, that is true. Hold on. I wanted to say rather biblically that is true, you know, because without Jesus, we are heading for destruction, period, point blank. Anyways, destruction. Where was okay. According to Freud, these aggressive, destructive drives are, quote, part of man's animal nature, end quote. The purpose of society, according to Freud, is to, quote, regulate and control through various forms of coercion the outbursts of this innate bestiality against which the human mind is ultimately powerless, end quote. We have self-control, okay? We have self-control. And certain outbursts are warranted. So, like, you know, be so for real. I mean, that's, the purpose of society, according to Freud, is to, quote, regulate and control through various forms of coercion. Okay, we already did that. Freud's principal point was that, quote, masses of people can be organized around appeals to the emotions, the most powerful, which appeals to the unconscious, which has the power to dominate and throw aside reason, end quote. And that's terrifying. Quote, the mass has never thirsted for truth, end quote. That's facts. And that's why I'm here, because I thirst for truth. I thirst for knowledge. I seek understanding. And if you do too, join me. Sub to the channel. If you've made it through 25 minutes of this video, God bless you. Okay. The purpose of society. Okay, wait. Okay. Okay. And when Freud wrote that the mass has never thirsted for truth, he was referring to crowds of raw minds swayed by elementary needs. Quote, they demand illusions and cannot do without them. They constantly give what is unreal precedence over what is real. They are almost as strongly influenced by what is untrue as what is true. No, they're more swayed by what is untrue than what is true. Like, I'm serious. I am being so dead ass serious with you right now. I have made it a point to actually research and look into stuff pretty much all my life. I've always been a reader of nonfiction books. I just want to know stuff. And the astounding ignorance of most people on any given topic is, it's par for the course, but it's sad. And then people that watch the news will look you dead in the face and think that you, the one that has read books on the topic and really knows that the news is propaganda, they act like you are the freaking retard or something, and you're the crazy one. And it's crazy to me. It's absolutely nuts. They are almost as strongly influenced by what is untrue as what is true. They have an evident tendency to not distinguish between the two, end quote. Facts on facts on facts, bro. Freud, in his mass psychology, stated that an individual's moral inhibitions and outlook can be broken down as parts of a mass. Lonnie Wolf succinctly tells the story of Freud's so-called powerful mass experience, which can gratify emotions. Quote, Freud further stated that under this condition, with man's reason dominated by emotionalism and unable and unwilling to look for truth, the individual in a crowd loses his moral conscience, or what Freud calls his ego ideal, end quote. To Freud, this is not necessarily a bad thing. Quote, since the moral conscience or the superego causes man to unnaturally repress his basic animal instincts. This, Freud claims, produces neurosis. In a crowd organized around people's emotions, the individual will exhibit a tendency to, quote, let himself go, to free himself of all moral and social inhibitions. Isolated, he may be a cultivated individual. In a crowd, he is a barbarian. That is creature acting by instinct, end quote. Therefore, the key to mass brainwashing is to create an organized, controlled environment in which, quote, stress and tension can be applied to break down morally informed judgment, thereby making an individual more susceptible to suggestion, end quote. Which is why I don't watch a lot of their bullshit, and I don't get involved really in politics or any of that nonsense. Because I know it's all manufactured. All this crap on TV, none of it is real. All these shootings, all these unalivings, all these things, they're not real. They are psyops. And I know that now, and I can see it. And so it just doesn't affect me. I don't get emotional over it. I literally don't care. None of it is real. And people, get mad and be like, how could you say Charlie Kirk's not unalived? Well, if you look at the circumstances around the situation, there was no forensic investigation on that spot, and they concreted paved over it the next day. That should tell you that they're hiding something. And I'm sorry, but like I said, having gone to television production school and knowing about special effects makeup and all of that, it was so obvious. If you go back and slow it down and watch it from all the angles that are available, It was a blood squib. There was no blood. There was no blood on his shoes. Okay. So the character formerly known as Charlie Kirk is no longer with us, but I guarantee you that guy that was playing the character is still very much alive and well. So people acting like, how dare I, and get like I'm like disgracing the dead or something. No, that's what I'm saying. He's not dead. Would y'all rather him be? It's bizarre. People's minds and the way they operate is bizarre. And I find it very hard to relate to most of the population. And I'm a bartender, so I have an extra hard time sometimes. It's like, I don't know what to talk to people about, you know? Golf, baseball. I don't know anything. I mean, I know a little about baseball, but that's only because I played softball. And I used to really like to watch baseball when I was a kid. But, you know, I put away the former things. You know, when I was a child, I did things like a child, and now I'm an adult, and I don't fucking do that shit anymore. I mean, it's just, excuse my language, it is what it is. Anyway, the point to be made here is that co-participation in a crowd causes a person to respond to a situation from an emotionally non-thinking set of reference points. In the case of Nazi Germany, coming across the radio into millions of homes was the voice of one man, the Austrian painter. The fact that all of Germany was hearing his voice at the same time gave an enhanced power to the message. The listener was literally part of a mass experience, taking it all in from emotionally non-thinking set of reference points. The painter's speeches were some of the first mass media events in history, as carefully staged as any event in modern history. Staged. Everything's staged. What did I say? Even, yes, the Schmolocaust. Both Tavistock and the Frankfurt School paid close attention to Nazi propaganda techniques, which they willingly incorporated into their research. The aim of this project, as stated in Adorno's Introduction to the Sociology of Music, was to, quote, program a mass culture as a form of extensive social control that would steadily degrade its consumers, end quote. Rap music, anyone? Death metal? I mean, even this country nowadays, like, come on, it's terrible. Quote, the brainwashers, okay, hold on. The application of their research into human behavior was set to launch a decade later in a major irreversible cultural revolution in America. So, like, that's in the past, bro. That happened like 50, 60 years ago. Quote, the brainwashers concluded that mass media events had caused people to suspend their belief in reality, that they had in fact been willing to accept uncritically things being said, which if they had heard in another context, they would most probably have rejected, end quote. Now think back to today. How insane are some of the things we have been told by our leaders? And are still being told, bro. Fauci allowed to be pleading the fifth how many thousand times? Weapons of a mass destruction in Iraq. That was a lie. Iranian mullahs allegedly threatening the security of the United States. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi supplying his troops with Viagra in order to grape women participating in the rebellion. I don't believe that for a second. Osama bin Laden's death. Explains Wolf, quote, during the Second World War, Bruno Bettelheim, a neo-Freudian J, published a psychological analysis of the Nazi period at the behest of the network of brainwashers associated with the Tavistock Institute. Bettelheim describes how, under extreme doubt and terror, the individual will regress into an increasingly more infantile state. In that condition, the inmates of the Nazi concentration camps started to mirror the personalities and mannerisms of their oppressors, the SS guards. Now, while I was reading, I just want to stop and give an impression that I was given while I was reading this. The Tavistock Institute acts like it was influenced by the Nazis. I feel like maybe it's quietly the other way around, but I have no proof of that. But I feel like that's some plausible deniability there. that they were just, looking for methods and ways, like not that they had already had them and were using them in other countries just like they're doing to America. Does that make sense? Because a lot of these Jays sure do be involved in a lot of this constructing of these ideas, the all of this. They're involved in all of it on both sides. And I just don't completely buy it all the way as far as like even this official story. Pray and ask God for discernment, man. That's all I gotta say. That because I beg for it all the time. Okay. In a widely circulated version of his work, The Informed Heart, he indicated that life outside the concentration camps mirrored the psychological disintegration taking place inside. All German citizens were becoming more infantile, less able to act as reasonable adults. End quote. Oh, were they now? Because they didn't want to put up with your trans and weird fetish shit and your stealing of all their money? That's what made y'all be crazy? See what I'm saying? Like, even this little narrative is sounds a little bit like bullshit to me, but whatever. That's just me. I can read something and not agree with it completely. Okay. In The Informed Heart, Bettelheim writes, quote, "The good German had to be unseen and also dumb. It is one thing to behave like a child because one is a child. It is quite another thing to be an adult and have to force oneself to assume childish behavior. It was not just coercion by others into helpless dependency. It was also the clean splitting of the personality. Man's anxiety, his wish to protect life, forced him to relinquish what was ultimately his best chance of survival." Which would have been what? Keeping the Jays in your country? His ability to react and make appropriate decisions. But giving this up, he was no longer a man but a child. Knowing that for survival, he should decide and act, and trying to survive by not reacting. These and their combination overpowered the individual to such a degree that he was eventually short of all self-respect and all feelings of independence, end quote. And I'm going to say that I wholeheartedly disagree with this take. I think this is more Jayish propaganda and bullshit against the Germans who rightfully had a fucking reason and a gripe with the Jays. But, we have to act like mass psychosis, they're crazy. I mean, and yeah, maybe this was some sort of a test or a whatever, but at the same time, these Jays were doing this shit in Germany. There's a reason they've been kicked out of 109 countries and kingdoms, bro. I didn't make that up. Okay. All right. In the end, the Schnazi experiment failed, and the Schnazis themselves, a group of Gnostic psychotics, had to be destroyed by the same forces who put them in power in the first place. Probably the Jays. In the meantime, the Third Reich caused a massive shift of consciousness in the planet, a paradigm shift, if you like. Because remember, it was a very small, right? A small minority of people who were actual Nazis that ended up taking over the whole thing. What does that remind you of today? Who does that remind you of today? A very small group of people that are having worldwide implications, making laws in other countries like that you can't even talk about them. If you know, you know. Okay. Okay. Although occultism and politics have long been bedfellows since the days of Joseph interpreting dreams for Pharaoh, or King Saul consulting the witch of Endor, or even earlier in the astral temples at Nineveh and Babylon, the world came very close to enduring a massive and industrialized, quote, cultocracy in the form of the Third Reich. It is worth repeating here that the Nazi Party was not a political party, as we commonly understand it, but a cult. Everything's a cult. You think Judaism's not a cult? Quote, Nazi appropriation of the occult was a weird farrago of astrology, Freemasonry, racism rooted in occultism, and popular European folklore. Sounds like Judaism to me. Sinister forces. Okay, the Cathars, the Holy Grail, the Knights Templar, of the Arthurian legends. Sinister forces at work against humanity in Morning of the Magicians, one of the most explosive books of the 1960s. The authors identified these forces in paranormal terms, but always linked them back to the fascist fantasies of the painter Himmler, Rosenberg, Dar, and Hess. Blatant occult fantasies that became government policy and which led to the Schmolocust and the World War II. Yeah, that's what. And what do you think Judaism is? What do you think that is? It's the same shit. It's the same shit. That millions of innocent people died because of this twisted dream is the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. But the authors insisted that there was something there below the surface of the Third Reich, a sinister force that had been successfully, for a time, evoked by the Nazi magicians of the SS. The phenomenon of coincidence, or what Carl Jung called synchronicity, was the most obvious evidence of the operation of this force, and one which the authors suggested would be the basis of a whole, quote, new conception of history, end quote. Yeah, boy, howdy, are they right. And when it was all over, those who imposed its horror on the world attempted through mass media to blame their victims for the crimes committed. Well, it's kind of obvious that you guys were behind it, so. The Germans, who the oligarchy, through their Nazi tools, had tortured en masse brainwashing, were told that they were collectively guilty for all that had happened. It brings to mind the term FAFO, fuck around and find out. And that's what happened in Germany. And these people want to act like, we ain't even did nothing. Bitch, please. Okay. Sorry, I keep losing my place. Okay. The Germans, whom the oligarchy, through their Nazi tools, had tortured and mass brainwashing, were told that they were collectively guilty for all that had happened. As a result, the entire nation was put on the dock and tried as criminals, rapists, and mass unalivers. And while we were told that it must never happen again, the brainwashers at such places as Tavistock Institute were already secretly working behind the scenes on a new and far more powerful brainwashing tool, television, to help them organize their fascist superstate without the now socially unacceptable Nazi superculture. Now, how many people actually understand this? How many people realize that the majority's perception of reality, especially in political arenas, is not their own? It is shrewdly manipulated and imposed upon them by the men behind the curtain. Many certainly do not, and brainwashing has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And we're going to end right there and just say that we're in a bad spot. And honestly, what the Jays, the little sneaky fuckery that they pulled in Germany, and how basically the whole world turned against Germany, and Germany has never recovered, honestly. Okay. That's what they're planning to do to us here in America. If you can't tell, with all the trans shit and gay shit and all this shit, like, we have no money. Our currency is fiat, and it's been that way for over like 100 years, I'm pretty sure. Who do you think the Federal Reserve is? Who do you think it's owned by? But it's schmanti-schmamitic to say so, to notice. I'm sick of it. Anyways, I'm going to stop here, and then I'll read one more section, and I got to go lay down and take a nap. All right, I'll be back. I think this is part 14. I'll go and find out. It's either 13 or 14. Anyways, mwah.